You're listening to The Blind Chick, an AfterSight original podcast. We're telling you stories about strength, overcoming hurdles, and living experiences. We see who you really are. Blindness can be an adventure. Are you ready for the journey of a lifetime? We are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Blind Chick. That's Moses Street.
And that's Penn Street, somebody that I have known quite a while. And the Blind Chick.
Well, I want to just get started today, Moses, if that's okay, because we have a really great guest and I want him to do most of the talking.
What?
You guys hear a lot about us, so let's get started. Well, today's guest is a podcaster, a tech guru, and a huge advocate for accessibility in the tech world. Marty Sobo, welcome to The Blind Chick.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Marty. And the first question is a tough one. Where are you joining us from today?
California, Southern California to be exact, about 10 minutes from the water, right, located in Malibu.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Wow. Oh, I surfed Malibu back in the day.
Yep, so did I. It was amazing. Third Point was great. Yeah. County line, all of that. So,
yeah. And awfully rocky bottom.
Yep, Topanga's rocky, big time.
Yeah, and Moses has a few scars from it.
Yeah.
Well, Marty, I know you lost your sight about 10 years ago, if I'm correct. What was that diagnosis and how did it change what you're doing now?
Yes, correct. I lost my sight 10 years ago, and it was retinopathy. And originally, when I was fully sighted, I did wear regular glasses, corrective glasses to make my vision 20/20, to do all the things.
Yeah.
When I went to go get new glasses and all of that, it was not my glasses being weak. It was I was having issues. They sent me to a doctor, like a real actual doctor, and they sent me to a specialist, like a retina specialist. And I did 2 whole days of testing there. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the second day, they stuck me in the doctor's office, and the doctor comes in and says, "Well, you're going to be blind. Good luck to you," and walks out. I don't think he was in there 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
I walked out and I was kind of in shock, and they didn't give you anything. Like, they don't say, here's some resources, here's a phone number to call, nothing at all, So that's kind of like how my journey started. And, now because I'm involved in tech, I've always been in the technology pretty much most of my life, but that's how I kind of continued down the technology path, because once I figured out all the things, right, which I'm still learning every day. You never figure out really all the things,
exactly.
But to be surviving every day and make it through every day, once I had some confidence in what was able to keep me moving forward, then I started helping other people. Mm-hmm. And, it's kind of gone from there.
Well, so what kind of tech were you involved with before your diagnosis?
So I used to work in the music industry, and I used to do video production, audio, and photography. Wow. We did marketing and promotions and band management and all of that stuff. So, and then I also did worked for Mac doing. It's like if you take your computer into the store and they take you to the desk, the counter, and they say, well, we can't help you here. We got to send it to the depot. So at the depot, I was at a corporate depot where we oversaw 10 stores, and all of those computers that couldn't be fixed at the counter would come to the depot. And I oversaw all the technicians diagnosing the computers, and then oversaw all the administration people who would be the go-to between the customer and the technicians to talk about, is your computer in or out of warranty? Is your data safe or not? What it would cost to fix your computer, if it's out of warranty, if it's in warranty, right. So all that stuff.
Wow. So yeah, now I kind of better understand of how you your brain already was in that arena. Because we run into, I work a lot with seniors, and I'm sure you get this too, and you talk about it in your podcast, but getting seen, like, because they didn't grow up on it, even when they were sighted, much less now as a senior, they not only deal with the vision loss, but then like, wait, I have to totally learn how to use a phone again, or how to, learn technology. And it was technology that I didn't even grow up with in the first place. It's like, I feel like it's a bigger struggle.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that happen with me most of the time when I'm helping these people. Like you said, it's sometimes elder people, but for the most part, people aren't always into technology, right? So if you're someone who is not, and then all of a sudden you lose your vision, and then all of a sudden now you need technology. The world in the younger generation thinks that, a lot of younger generation were born with, technology in their hand, you know what I mean? But a lot of these people are having two things happen. They're told they have to do something which they know nothing about or how to use it. That's the first thing. It's totally foreign to them. And then the other thing is, and a lot of people don't really think about this, is that the emotion and all of what goes on for someone who has recently is losing or have lost their vision. A lot of people say that it's like losing a person, like someone died. It's kind of like that kind of loss. A lot of people, when I first talk to them, they're really angry in the beginning because they feel like this is happening to them, but they don't really know who to talk to or where to go, and they think nobody understands them. People say, "Oh, I'm so sorry you lost your vision. What can I do?" Or "We feel for you," whatever, which kind of is true, but at the same time, the people go, "No, you don't understand," know? And a lot of people, who I talk to have that issue, but I always tell them, "Hey, I do understand because I have gone through the same thing." And they go, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I lost my vision, and I went through all the same thing." And when they hear that, then they really realize that I do understand what they're going through. And then they ask me, "Oh, can I ask you some questions?" And then it kind of goes to a different place. They just ask a lot of general questions of how this and how that, and what do you do for this and that. But now they have someone they can talk to that does really understand them. And so you go through that process a bit, and then you come back to the technology part later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Because then they're not trying to learn the technology at that point out of anger, right? It's a lot, I would say, because it's almost like an education for the person who has lost their vision, but it's a completely separate education for the family and friends around them who now need to help them, Like for me, I was super independent person, like I wanted to do everything myself. I hated asking for help. I was just a super independent person, and I kind of just flew by, the seat of my pants to do whatever it was I was doing, and didn't really need to ask. I always kind of wanted to do whatever I could. And to go from being able to drive and travel and do all the things, to not all of a sudden. And that is a huge, loss right there. I mean, going from being able to drive to not being able to drive is massive. But then also having to learn how to ask for help. There's no way for someone who has lost their vision, whether they were born with it or have been most of their life or lost it later, to go through life and not ever have to ask for help. There's just no way. I mean, you have to learn how to ask for help. That's a hard thing for people who are very independent to learn how to do, like myself.
Well, and not just to ask for help, but actually advocating for your community, so yes, I feel like every single time, and I've had lots of practice. I've been blind, low vision for decades. I've had lots of practice, but it still always shocks me, I guess, of how little the sighted world knows or understands about blindness. And I just met with a young woman who's 19, the other day, and she has RP. And so she's just sort of in the beginning stages of learning how to use a cane, and she wants to get a guide dog, and she's learning Braille. Like, she's very new into it. But most of her questions were, well, how do you, when you go to the grocery store, like, how do you shop? Like, really basic things. And when I said, well, you can ask. Like, you ask all grocery stores, especially the larger ones, they have customer service people that's what they're there for, is to, and they can walk around with, and she goes, oh, well, but I don't think I'd like to do that. And I'm like, you're going to have to learn. And it really is not just asking for help, but it's advocating for our community, because when you do ask for help, you're actually educating that person that is helping you, so that the next person that's blind or low vision that they encounter, they have a better understanding of how to offer help or to give help. Yeah,
I agree 100%. You're a perfect example of someone who has been, like you said, doing it for decades, right? And you go to a grocery store, and it doesn't matter how much experience you have. There's no way for you to tell which is the chicken noodle soup and which is the tomato soup, right? I mean, you just need someone to tell you which one it is. That's what I mean by having to ask for help. The other huge struggle, I would think, that I've seen a lot is one of the first things that I did was learn mobility. And I had a hardcore old school like mobility person who taught me, right? Who actually became my friend, very close person and mentor, in that process. But he would not let me use any technology. I had to use a rigid cane, and he was the kind of person that would walk behind me kind of far back. And he wanted me to crash, fail, fall down, bail, you know what I mean? And there was no technology. He always said to me, he's like, yes, there's technology. Yes, you can use your phone or apps or whatever it is. But what if you're in a place where your phone doesn't work? What if it dies? What if there's no internet? How are you going to get yourself out of this situation? You need to learn how to feel for curbs. You need to learn how to hear the flow of traffic, cross streets, all these things, right? I mean, for a year, it was like being in a military camp, I mean, but I'm thankful for it now. You know what I mean? It gives me confidence to be able to get around on my own, to get on and off a bus, to get in and out of a Lyft or an Uber. A lot of people isolate themselves because they don't know how to go out on their own. They're one of the biggest things in the blind community is isolation. People either don't have anyone to help them out, or they're too scared to go out in the world.
Well, but even going along with that, is things like Lyft and Uber, or even getting the bus route, right? So is not accessible until you learn those skills, like what you do on your podcast. Like, you have to learn, like, because you can't get a Lyft ride or an Uber ride without your smartphone.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Well, actually, you can. There is a phone number you can call.
There is now, right?
But it still doesn't help you that much. You don't know where they're going to be, when they're coming,
Well, but even with that, I know so many blind people, especially the seniors, that it's very difficult for them just to make a simple phone call. And it's because they haven't received the training on how to use voiceover and those kinds of things. And so it's almost like, even though things are better now than they were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, but almost not really. Because before, if you were blind and, you had the old rotary or push button, landline, it was pretty easy to navigate when you were blind, because it's very tactile. Where now, yes, they do. They do still have some phones that, do not have the flat screens, but those are rare to come by anymore. So it's like you almost have to learn. You're forced to learn technology to gain more independence. There's Ira, there's Be My Eyes, there's FaceTime, there's all these different apps that you can use. But that's why like podcasts like yours and places to turn to like yours are so very, very important.
It's funny you talk about the avocation, being able to advocate for yourself, because in the long run, that's kind of how our name was created, sort of. Originally, it kind of started out as a joke because in 2020, everyone had to go to Zoom. Zoom blew up, and it was like the whole world is Zoom now, But the biggest problem for anyone to be in Zoom was you're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Exactly.
You're muted. Unmute yourself. And it was kind of a joke in the beginning. But I woke up in the middle of the night one night and with this epiphany, and I went, wait a second, unmute, be heard. Unmute as in like, don't be scared to ask for help or your question, so like unmute, be heard, advocate for yourself. Don't be scared to learn how to, be heard, and that's kind of how it ended up the way it is.
Yeah. I love that, because we all know how hard it is to come up with a name for your podcast or your blog, or if you get a new dog, how do you name it? But unmute is like, it's so perfect.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things that kind of woke up in the middle of the night and went, whoa, epiphany, I had to write it down so I wouldn't go back to sleep and then wake up in the morning and forget,
Exactly.
And that what was the inspiration? Because you were in an extremely visual world, and I'm a photographer, and I can't imagine what you went through. But what was the inspiration for starting Unmute?
So going back to, let's see, would have been around 2015 is... it was 2014 when I lost my vision. So 2014, I met my mobility coach. He was the first person in the blind community who I met. He was a blind mobility instructor, but he was into technology too, but he was not blind, but he had a lot of access to the blind community. Right. And the first thing that I did was learn mobility. That was the first thing. So he introduced me to ACB back in 2014, and
which
he had
stands
said to me,
for American Council of the Blind.
Right, yes. Correct. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And so at that time, it was more of like, the world hadn't shut down yet, so it was like, hey, I'm a part of a group, and, everyone or most of the people are low vision blind people. Do you want to come? And his point originally was to just get me there so that I could be around other blind people in that kind of a social situation. Because, learning how to be social in a blind situation opposed to a visual situation are two completely different things. So that was kind of part of that, along with the mobility too. He's always mobility, But I met a lot of people. They were really cool. I ended up joining an affiliate that, he was a part of. And of course, everybody really quickly figured out that I was really into tech. I learned how to use the tech really quick with the accessibility features like voiceover on an iPhone, stuff like that, because I didn't need to learn how to use the iPhone. I already understood how to use technology. Right. It was just using the technology with accessibility. And so I helped people there. Everyone was asking me questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? That's kind of how that started. The next thing I know, I'm asked to do speaking at conventions. And so I did speaking at conventions, state affiliate conventions, stuff like that. Yeah. And then I ended up meeting my business partner through all of that. And then we ended up doing stuff together, website design for our state at the time, which was in Oregon. And then we were both into audio stuff and technology. And so it kind of took off from there, to be honest with you. And we were put in a position where we had to make a decision. We were going back and forth about, should we start our own thing or should we not? Should we go independent? Should we not? And we had all these ideas. We were going back and forth, but it wasn't something we had to do. We just kept talking about it, Right. Then we were put in the position of having to do it. We literally had to make the decision. Do we or don't we? And we have to make it now. Yeah. And we just kind of both were silent for a second, and we just kind of went, let's do it. And that was it. We started with one thing, and it just turned into It actually kind of was a hobby, to be honest with you, to help people. And we weren't trying to make it a business or anything, you know? It just started out as a community call in the ACB community. Then it turned into a podcast. Then we started doing other things and then other things. And it just more podcasting, more audio. And it just sort of took on a life of its own. And the next thing I know, we have a business. And then the business started growing. And it just was very organic. It kind of just all happened on its own, sort of. It wasn't something we were trying to do in the beginning. On one side of it is we put out our own content. We do, the live show on Tuesdays. That was kind of where it all started. Yeah. And we've been doing that since, I want to say around 20, somewhere around there, when the ACB community started. And once we were doing that, people would come to us and they'd say, we missed your show, like, when are you going to be on again? And so then we decided, well, hey, let's just take the show after we're done and we'll just edit it down and put it out as a podcast after. So we started doing that. And a lot of people said, oh, we couldn't make it, but we listened to your content and it's great. We love it, So it's kind of like services based, but it's also audio based, podcasting, and the other side of it is service based.
Okay,
so
that makes sense. Well, so Marty, I know one of the classes and trainings that you guys mention on your podcast is unmuting your potential. And can you share a little bit more about what that entails?
That really kind of just goes through all of what we do. We don't really teach like a specific thing about that. It sort of started out as like, I was saying earlier, unmute yourself. You got to unmute yourself because people were learning how to use a new technology in that time, Right. And then kind of as we branded and did branding and we started telling people, hey, there's no dumb questions, ask whatever you feel like. We just kind of roll on that, and we just make it known that you can ask whatever. It's okay. Advocate for yourself, ask your question, no matter how big, small, dumb, or not dumb someone may think it is. If it's important to you and you feel like you want to ask it, you know? So. Yeah.
After Sight, we have a low vision support group that meets every Wednesday and everybody's welcome. Like, we're not affiliated with anybody. Like, you don't even have to be a listener with After Sight. You don't have to be with NFB, ACB, like AFB. Well, it doesn't matter. You can, and you don't even need to be in the United States. We've had a few people who've called in. It's on Zoom. And we talk about that in the support group a lot, about this is a safe place, because we have people who are brand new, like literally last week, their doctor gave them a similar diagnosis to what you received, Marty, 10 years ago. It's like, oh no, this is going on. You're going to lose your vision. There's nothing I can do. We'll see you in a year. So there's everybody from that to, there's a woman who is totally blind since birth. And yet we all come together because we all have this common thread, and we're still all learning from each other. The person who's been blind her whole life is still learning from the person who just got diagnosed. And we need more of that in our community, because like you said, we're a small group, but not really. And like, I know here in Colorado, we have over 100,000 people that are blind or low vision. And it's like, that's a lot of people, and if we could organize, we'd take over the world.
Here is one thing. If I could change anything, and, not all of us, but a lot of people go through this. If I could change one thing in the community, it would be to have some sort of card or documentation or something that every single eye doctor, specialist office would have. And if you get a diagnosis, the least they could do is go call this phone number to get some resources and to move forward from here. If I could change that, that would be great. Imagine your support group that you have. If someone knew how to get a hold of you, they just got a diagnosis, and they could walk out of there with that a way to contact you, so that you can come to this group and you can talk to other people and you can get some beginning resources to start pushing you in the direction whatever it is you would need to go in, that would be the one thing I would want to change, because
Yes.
I'll never forget that day, you know?
Yeah.
And I went out of there going, what in the world do I do now? I know there's blind people in the world, but do I know anybody? No.
Right.
Like, where do I go? What do I do? I didn't know anything, you know? I mean, it's kind of a scary place to be, you know?
It's really scary.
Like, what do you do now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Marty, how can people find out more about you, what you're doing, and where can they listen to Unmute?
So you can go to our website, and we have all the things on there. So that's unmute.show. You can contact us. You can email us at feedback@unmute.show. And if you choose to use a podcatcher, any of those, then, which is how it's like an app on your phone to listen to podcasts, you would go to the search box and search for Unmute Presents, and then our stuff all shows up there.
Yeah. And I do really want to recommend people going to the podcast and the website, because there's all kinds of stuff on there. Like, even though I know how to use VoiceOver on my phone, there's still times I get stuck with something like, why isn't it working? And you can go onto Mute, and there's, listen to back episodes, and trust me, you will find exactly what you need to get yourself unstuck. Well, Marty, thank you so much for taking time today. I know you are extremely busy, for being on the show and really helping so many people, not just in the United States. I know you guys are international as well. I just can't thank you. And let's work on that. We have 911, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It would be awesome if there was legislation that if you get a diagnosis that you're losing your vision, here is one number you can call. That would just be so amazing.
Yep. And thank you for having me on. It's an honor and humbling, and I appreciate you guys, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Marty.
You bet.
And thank everybody else out there for joining us week after week and sharing the podcast. We just keep growing. It's wonderful and beautiful. Definitely thank AfterSight and all of you who do all the hard work behind the scenes. Moses and I get to do the fun stuff, but you guys do the hard work that makes this possible. And remember to be kind to yourself this week, and find a way to be kind to somebody else. It's good for your soul. And we will see you next week.